All right, so here we are in the brooder house. I'm gonna show you the 5 key elements that you have to have in your brooder house when you're brooding baby chicks, chickens, ducks, turkeys, whatever it may be. I'm also gonna throw in a bonus, so stay tuned. All right, so number 1, the first thing you're gonna need in your brooder house is you need a structure, right? We need something to keep these birds safe from predators, safe and warm and protected from rain, protected from the elements, and make sure they can't get eaten. So this is our brooder house that I built. And this is just a simple hoop house style that I built out of PVC hoops. You can do all sorts of different styles for your brooder house. I believe I started with just a cattle trough was the first brooder, and I built probably 5 or 6 different variations since then. I even have a 1,000 square foot brooder house that I built, hoop house style, that I built for less than $1,000, which I'll put a link in below to give you the plans for how to do that. But this is one of the smaller brooder houses that we use. Basically, it's just a simple hoop house style. We have poultry netting, poultry wire, or hardware cloth around the sides to keep predators out. It's covered in plastic. We put shade cloth on the top, tarps on the top, keep the rain out and keep the temperature down, and so there's not too much sunlight and too much heat in the brooder house. So that's number 1. The first thing you need is a good solid structure to keep the chicks safe from the elements, keep them warm and dry and protected from predators. The second thing you're gonna need is a water source, and I'm gonna show you the water sources I use. You can use a simple water source like this one here. This is just a refillable jug. It's a great way to start if you've got just a few birds. But since then, we've moved to these style waters, and these are called Biddy drinkers, and these are fantastic. You can plumb them in. We have them plumbed in, so I don't have to ever refill them. They have a couple inches of water, so the birds can kind of dunk their beaks, rinse their nostrils, get plenty of water, and you can plumb as many as you want in a line. We've got 6 of them here. I love these things. I'll put a link below where I get them. I don't get any affiliate commission. I just like to recommend the things that I use that work for me. I'll recommend so you can use them as well. One pro tip when you're doing the waters is a lot of times young birds can fall in here and they'll have trouble getting out to this little lip when they're the first 2 or 3 days old and they're very young. So we put gravel in here. And this gravel just kind of raises the floor of the water so that if they do fall in, they can easily step back out. And so I just do this, put a little bit of gravel on the bottom for the first 2 to 3 days, just so they don't get stuck in there, they don't drown, they can get out, and then after that, we don't use the gravel anymore. The third thing you're gonna need is feed. You can give them feed in several ways. I love these big 5-gallon buckets. They hold a lot of feed. This is called the Super Bowl poultry feeder. Holds a 5-gallon bucket worth of feed. It's got a nice lip here to hold that feed, and they can get in there and eat all they want. It doesn't get clogged. So this is another style feeder that we've used, and you see how narrow this lip is, and with this dividers here, a lot of times food will get stuck in there, it'll go bad, it'll get wet, soiled, and you can't get it out and it gets clogged up. Never had that problem with these Super Bowl feeders. I love these things. As far as feed is concerned, we usually start them off on a high protein chick crumble. This is a 24% protein chick crumble that we start with. It's got vitamins, minerals, it's very good for them. We usually feed them this for the first 3 to 4 weeks, and then we start switching to a lower protein, more of a grower ration. All right, the next thing you're gonna need in your brooder house is bedding. Some sort of bedding to keep them warm, to keep them cozy. I like straw, it's my favorite. You can use straw, you can use hay, you can use wood chips. There's a lot of different kinds of bedding. Some people use peat moss. We started with shavings. The problem with wood shavings, are that the birds like to eat them, and they also compact, and they get a layer of manure on top, and it kind of cakes up and makes a crust on top, and it doesn't work real well. Whereas this hay, especially for ducklings, which are really wet animals and poo a lot and drag water everywhere, this allows the water to drain very nicely. You can also spread a thin layer of hay, and it goes a long way. Just a couple of bales of hay is cheap, it's economical. The water and manure drains through it very nicely. It doesn't cake or cap like shavings do, so I really like using hay. All right, the 5th thing you're gonna need is you're gonna need a heat source. So I'm gonna show you a couple things about this heat source, a couple bonuses here. What we use is these electric heat lamps. So we have, these are 250 watt bulb infrared lamps, and they do a great job of keeping the birds warm, and they're electric, so we always have heat. And you can see that I made this box for these heat lamps, and what this box does, this is what we call an Ohio brooder, and basically I just use this insulation panel and make a little box so it really contains that heat. So it's better to on our heating bill to heat a small area than to heat this entire room. If we heat this small area, they can all huddle under there, stay warm, rather than heating the entire room. Saves a lot of money on our heating bill. whether it's electric or gas or whatever you're using to keep the birds warm. Another thing with this is I have an electric controller to control the temperature. So this is an Inkbird temperature controller. At the top, you'll see the internal temperature and then the set temperature. So this I can set so that if the temperature in here is below 90 degrees, the heater turns on. It's nice because if you get really hot days during the day, you don't have to worry about your birds overheating and cooking in here. You can adjust whatever temperature you want, your lamps will turn off. But if it gets cold at night, they turn back on. So that I really love these temperature controllers, these Inkbird controllers. And here's the exact model. So this is the Inkbird ITC 308. I'll put a link for this at the bottom. These are great little temperature controllers for your electric lights. Okay, so that was the top 5 things that you need in your brooder house, but I'm gonna give you a couple more bonuses, a couple more things that are essential, is you need to give your birds some sort of grit. We use play sand when they're very young. This helps them digest their food, helps improve digestion and growth rates. We start with sand, coarse sand when they're very young, and then as they get older, we'll move to a larger grit size. So we like to have grit in the brooder. The last thing that you'll need is fresh air. So we have a hole cut in the side of our plastic here with a box fan. This is turned on, blowing fresh air through the brooder house. Fresh air is extremely important. You can't have it closed off. You do need airflow because if you don't, you get ammonia buildup. It's not healthy for the birds. It's hard to breathe in here, and it really causes a lot of health issues. So having this fan blowing, cycling air, fresh air through here, not only helps modulate the temperature and keep the temperature a good stable average, but also gets that ammonia out. And in case you're wondering, we can raise about 500 birds in here. We have 2 sections that are 12 by 12. So we put about 200 to 250 birds in each section. The first day, I keep the birds in a small section. I give them plenty of food, plenty of water everywhere they can access it. We want to make sure they have lots of access to fresh food, fresh water.